Good evening. In what no doubt passes for a historical event, President Yoweri Museveni and leaders of 3 opposition parties yesterday met as part of efforts to foster a dialogue process. The meeting, according to organizers, was aimed at providing a springboard for ending a cycle of violent contestation for political power. The Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue meeting, however, happened without the Forum for Democratic Change, the largest opposition party. IPOD was formed in 2009 as a forum for leaders of political parties represented in Parliament to engage on matters of common interest. On the spot tonight, we ask what the timing and resolutions of this meeting mean. Are they binding enough to impact the current political terrain? And who are the losers and the winners? Tonight, my guests are Engineer Patrick Amuriat, the FDC President, Dr. Gerard Siranda, DP Secretary General, Mr. Frank Rusa, Executive Secretary IPOD, and Mr. James Tweheyo, who is a member of the NRM Central Executive Committee. Gentlemen, you're most welcome, and all of you tonight are on the spot. A warm welcome once again. Let me begin with you, Mr. Frank Rusa, as Executive Secretary IPOD. You organized, you took your time, you invited the 5 principals, and yesterday you had your summit. How would you appraise yourself?
I think largely the summit went very well. Of course, the best ideal situation would have been having all the parties present, but as you noticed, FDC was absent. So with that, apart from that, I think the summit went very well, and as organizers, we are pretty impressed.
And you've got information, did they write to you before we even come to Engineer Patrick why they were absent after taking a lot of time on organizing for this? For 9 years, you never had a summit that had also the principal of the NRM party.
Yes, maybe I could just give a little background to bring viewers, to give a bit of context to this conversation. IPOD was founded 9 years ago, as you have correctly pointed out, and the idea of IPOD was to bring political parties together. It is a voluntary association, so they came together, bound by a memorandum of understanding, to spend time discussing issues of interest, cross-party issues of interest. And the IPOD body has both a council, which is composed of secretary generals and delegates from the parties, and the apex body is called the summit, which has the party principals. For the first 9 years, there had never been a meeting of the party principals. Mm-hmm. And some members have always felt that the reason why IPOD resolutions never see the light of day is maybe because they've never gotten a buy-in of the principals. So high on the agenda was, when can we have a summit, a meeting of the principals? So we consulted widely with the council, we consulted widely with the party principals themselves, individually and collectively, and they all agreed that the time is now to have this meeting. So we started this organization, and we thought that to have a good meeting, we need to have an agenda. So again, the parties gathered in a retreat in November at Munyonyo. Everybody was represented, all the parties of IPOD were represented at the highest possible levels. Secretary Generals, Vice Presidents, sat and discussed we were being led by the former president of the Uganda Law Society, who was doing the moderation, and they agreed to discuss 4 broad themes, which you shall get to know about a little bit later. So then it was ready for having a meeting. But a few days to the summit, we received a letter from the president of the Forum for Democratic Change. And in this letter, he was saying that although in principle he is still committed and the party is still committed to the dialogue, they were rather uncomfortable with attending the summit selected for the 12th for a couple of reasons, but prominent among those was that they did not feel there was sufficient goodwill from especially the ruling party to see through some of the resolutions, seeing that in the past some resolutions had been made by IPOD and none had ever been implemented. Number 2, they were saying that they are concerned that the political atmosphere in the country prevailing was so much against them, and they had been banned, the activities had been banned, and because of this discomfort, they thought we wouldn't want to participate. But when we tabled this to the council to say, now what do we do if one of our big members is not here? What do we do? And the rest of the members said, I think we should go ahead and we shall raise the issues of our partner FDC in the summit, because that's where they should go.
Okay,
so that's a bit of background.
All right, thank you very much. You have actually mentioned the name of the party president, who is right here, Engineer Patrick Amuriat. And you talked of the discomfort he was feeling. So, you know, sometimes people say that when you have a discomfort, when you have a problem, actually that's a big reason for you to sit down and talk, because there's a problem.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening to you viewers. First of all, I think we need to set the tone for this discussion. Was there a summit? In our view, there wasn't a summit. And my response to this question is based on Article 5, 1.4b of the MOU that the participating parties signed, where a quorum, talks about quorum of the summit. A quorum of the summit will be all the participating members of the summit. And so, given that the FDC didn't come to this meeting would not qualify to be called a summit.
Why didn't you come?
Well, I will go into that. So to me, the meeting was a discussion, probably a get-together between what would seem to be understanding political parties. And it's very unfortunate that one of the friends turned hostile towards the others. The reasons why the FDC didn't come, and this was thoroughly discussed internally. We had meetings of the management committee, one of the top organs of the party, of NEC, which is a top decision-making organ of our party. And although we had arguments, you know, within these two institutions of the party, we came to the conclusion that we wouldn't come to that meeting. The first reason is that we seem to be stampeded by especially the NRM, and that this meeting was being pushed by the chairman of the NRM. And it looked like, you know, the IPOD secretariat didn't have control over this. You know, the dates were placed and, you know, they happened. There's a claim that the FDC is the one that suggested the 12th. But I've since cross-checked and found that that is not true. And so for us, we have got institutions in our party. We felt that these institutions needed to be given opportunity to internalize, you know, the formation of the agenda, which we think that is a foundation for future dialogue by the participating parties. We tried to ask for an extension, but all this fell on deaf ears, as it looked like our colleagues were really, you know, yearning to have this meeting. Maybe they had their good reasons, you know, to be running over themselves to see that this meeting takes place. And the second reason is that you will appreciate IPOD has been around for quite a while. It's taken 9 years for Mr. Museveni to want to come to the summit of the IPOD. Between the inception of IPOD to now, many decisions have been taken by IPOD, and some of them advanced to a level of causing, for example, electoral reforms. These found their way to Parliament for one reason or another. But then when it reached that point, you know, some people felt they were not good to be discussed at the time. And they were killed courtesy of NRM. I remember the former Right Honorable Prime Minister, Amama Mbabazi, decisively on behalf of the NRM, killing proposals for electoral reform. And so on our part, we felt it would have been important for us to interrogate what caused the death of these ideas that came through IPOD, so that we may not tread the same path again. That is point number 2. Point number 3 is whether we actually have political parties today in practice. And what I'm stating here is about what we've experienced in the field. Today, it is not possible for political parties to carry out their activities without resistance or impedance from the authorities beyond their headquarters. We are actually being taken back to a time before a referendum was conducted in this country to embrace multi-party politics.
And what's the 4th reason?
So there were just 3 reasons.
Okay, but now,
and so for us, viewers need to understand that the FDC is not against any form of dialogue per se. So, but dialogue, Patrick, that we are going to be involved in should be principal dialogue, and we should be able to tell what direction we are taking.
Those problems you've just enumerated, you want to sit down and discuss them with who? If you don't want to be with the 4 principles of the leaders of government.
Some of them, Patrick.
Where do you want to sit and discuss such problems you're talking about if you do not want to be amongst the leaders of this country?
Some of them, Patrick, are matters of the law. How do you sit to negotiate your rights? These are inalienable. They are rights given to us by the Constitution of Uganda.
But you see,
rights to assemble.
Yes.
Listen.
This point can
rights
still
to
be
associate.
Made. This point can still be made.
When
the 4 principles are there and
that
is captured by the world. Actually, you could even step out.
Can we say that, we've got to negotiate our rights? Is this what you imply in that argument? We're saying these are given to us as citizens of this country. And so anybody who wants to take them away from us is an enemy of the citizens of this country.
Indeed. It wouldn't be for you negotiating for your right. It would be for you to use that platform to assert your position so that Ugandans can know this is what you think and this is the stand you take. In fact, even if you
why are our rights being trampled upon to begin with? That is the question. We have a constitution. We have laws governing our operation. We don't violate these laws. They are acts of parliament that govern the operation of political parties.
So before I go to Mr.
all that the chairman
with the IPOD colleagues for months. In November, you had a meeting. Your representative agreed.
We've been sitting for years, actually.
Yes,
for years.
A few days to the summit, that's when you say we're not taking. You're not.
No,
taking
there were issues of communication between us and IPOD. I think smooth flow of information was really lacking.
Okay, let me go to Mr.
And let me just finish this point. And when you go back to see the nature of communication, then the letter that I signed is not misplaced at all.
Let me go to Mr. Tweheyo. You are a member of the Central Executive Committee of the NRM party that is in power right now.
You're right.
And yesterday, if there has been anybody who was speculating or thinking of the President Museveni's intent, now he spoke with clarity that he's not going anywhere. And I suppose one of the reasons that maybe the summit wanted to discuss was about transition. And transition to many Ugandans is a big thing. To the president, it's petty. How does that become petty?
First of all, good evening, the viewers. The President Museveni, is a citizen of this country. And it brings us back to the rights our senior brother here, Patrick, was talking about. He has a right like any other citizen, a right to be represented, but also a right to present himself as a candidate if it is within the framework of the law. And I'm glad and welcome the idea that yes, he seems to be expressing his willingness should the bona fide bodies say yes, please come and represent us. And I think it's a welcome idea. But away from that, I would like to make it very clear that IPOD is a composition of the parties that have members of parliament in parliament, that is represented in parliament. Now, before this summit took place, a series of meetings took place. And by the way, he made a good mention that 9 years down the road, there was no meeting. But all along, IPOD's leadership is transitional. It rotates from FDC, from UPC, from NRM. So that is what has been happening. But it is also on record that some of the leaders in FDC have ever said it, they will never meet with Museveni. It has never been mentioned. Never mind who mentioned that. But even before that, they have always, especially our colleagues in FDC, they have always said, look, if we are to meet conditions, condition number 1, what is the agenda? Condition number 2, we want a venue that is neutral. Condition number 3, this man called Museveni, the chairman and the party president of NRM, should avail himself. We first gave it a trial. We said, let us first visit the party headquarters. And we did it. We visited FDC headquarters in Najanankumbi. We visited UPC headquarters at Uganda House. We visited DP in the middle of the city. And when it came to visiting the NRM headquarters, members of FDC bolted out. Subsequently, their vice president, Salama Musumba, is the one who risked and came in. And I can imagine there could have been a challenge with that visit. But I don't know whether it was deliberate or not deliberate, but there was that hiccup. It sent a signal that there is something wrong. Then here comes the arrangements for this meeting, the summit.
Okay, but you know, Engineer Patrick Amuriati raises a very important issue.
Yes.
That as if there are no parties here today. That they are not even given time, freedom to have rallies and all that. Including the other day when the people wanted to gather at Nambole, which is a very public place and open and no one can be antagonized there.
Wait a minute, were they gathering as a party or as a crowd?
What do you mean as a crowd?
Yeah. We're talking about the party organizations and all that. But you're telling me about the gathering at Nambole.
Political parties, even outside Kampala, have found it hard to assemble, to organize, to have a rally.
But there is freedom of assembly. But assembly is organized, and in the parliament of this country,
he can enumerate for you
a law was passed called Public Order Management Bill.
What does it?
It turned into a law. Now, does it mean that if we want to assemble in a market where people are selling their mangoes, their oranges, we go there and assemble?
I'm giving you examples of places like Nambole.
I agree with you.
Of places like Irukunjiri
But
Stadium.
what happens when Nambole is booked by other people? Should they be displaced because this is a party? There should be order in the first place. There should be rules of engagement in the second place. And these rules of engagement should be respected by not only the party in the government, but also the parties that are struggling to come to power.
Is not even following the rules of engagement.
Which rules are we breaking? Would you be specific and say you broke rule X?
I saw that happen when Dr. Besigye was supposed to meet his party members in Rukunjiri.
But what are the regulations supposed to be followed? You are supposed to inform the police. You are supposed to inform them of the place, the venue and time. You are supposed to be supported by them and guided by the police. I want to admit, in some cases, there have been indiscipline of some police officers. In some cases. And like any other government, any other country, police officers are not necessarily
the
property of a party.
The Secretary General here of the
They are part of government. They are part of citizens.
Dr. Gerard Siranda, your colleague who's seated right next to you there on your left, says this was no summit.
I want to appreciate the contribution of all my colleagues. I want to start by greeting the Democrats out there and Ugandans, my people in Paris and Busia. I know that we are from a very tough, challenging moments in Busia, but we withheld all that and we went to the summit. First of all, the most important thing of this meeting yesterday was kind of an icebreaker, was kind of a curtain raiser. I want Ugandans not to fear to engage. I want Ugandans to give us an opportunity to lead. We are leaders, and we are not going to run away from our responsibility and let President Museveni look like he owns this country alone. This summit, or IPOD...
But that's what he exactly did and showed you yesterday.
No, there are many things. You take away the public you know very well, Mr. Kamara, that a lot of things world over in all the summits happen in the side meetings. And most of the time, we must step in and take the hard decisions as leaders. This summit, or the IPOD communication, I agree that there might be maybe issues of communication, but the first channel of communication when you read our MOU is through the Secretary Generals. IPOD communicates through the Secretary Generals. If the Secretary Generals are not doing their work, then let us not take the blame to the IPOD, because the Secretary General is the leader of the delegation. So every communication, and we put it very clear because we wanted to know the channels of communication. I believe that the delegations that come to IPOD must get back to their entities and brief their entities with all the authority. That's why when Honorable Mafavi was the chair of IPOD Council, he made it very categorically clear that he will not chair any other council until NRM sends delegates that can commit the party. His second reason was that he will not continue to chair council until we commit that NRM chairman will accept to come to council where he's not the chair or whether he's chair or not. And we want to applaud him for that. And he led for 6 months, handed over to NRM. We still failed to get the council, summit sitting on NRM, and we went to UPC. For the first time in the history of our multi-party democracy, we had the meeting where we have party leaders that can commit their entities engage in a one-on-one meeting. We always talk to them through media, through go-between, through messengers. Talking to individuals that can commit their entities was a very historical moment for us. We want to run around with that. We want to see, we want to monitor, is what we committed to going to happen? Because we have set another summit in May next year. God willing, DP will be the one in the leadership of that summit. But we want to try to walk the road and see whatever that we agreed on yesterday, will it happen? There are many things that we agreed on that was not brought. For instance, IPOD went to this summit. The main purpose of this summit was to agree on the agenda that we set. And the agenda one that we said, all of us, all parties were in that meeting. If one person did not take these issues to their entity, then I cannot account for that. We know that we went to the summit with a lot of reservation, but we said as party, do we run away from confronting the man who appoints the Electoral Commission? Do we run away from confronting the man that appoints the police that is blocking all of us, blocking FDC, blocking DP? We had a meeting in Mityana. This meeting was to celebrate the victory of our candidates and open a party office. Even after doing all the writing, committing to the police, all this communication, police broke these rallies. Now we are asking, they do it in whose interest? Who is the appointing authority? What's the language? And we said that this is the right moment for us to confront this person. I preach the gospel sometimes, and we have never gotten tired from confronting the devil and saying, the devil, this is wrong, and bringing people, so that we bring people online.
So now, what I know is that when you meet,
yes,
if you don't have a quorum, and if one of the principal is not there, whatever you discuss is not binding.
No, we can either make this, like I said, first we needed to get this kicked off. And for everything to happen, you must take a step. We took a step, and we believe that we took the concerns of our colleagues. You can call it a consultative summit, whatever. But the first thing in place, we considered many things. Do we just let this go? Do we let this man continue saying that these guys cannot meet? Remember, there are two processes. We had the process of the national dialogue. which as parties we had reservation over. Now we say this is our own process. We have the MOU of this own process. The moment my party president, Honorable Norbert Mao, signed this MOU with myself, and we saw that President Museveni and the chairman of NRM had signed, at one moment we knew that it was not going to be a surprise. We had to meet. We cannot keep running away from our own processes. Let's keep processes, confront the situation. I know.
Mr. Frank Rusa, before we take a break, you probably at IPOD are organizing for another summit, which is maybe taking place in May next year, like you're saying. How do you ensure that the group, Forum for Democratic Change, with the president, their party president who's right here, are going to be there?
Let me first say that, in principle, as the president of FDC has just told us, they are committed to the dialogue. They are members of IPOD and have not withdrawn. They were signed up on the agenda that was agreed upon at Munyonyo. They have not disassociated themselves from the items on that agenda, only that they have questioned the validity, the relevance of some of the items there, but they signed on to them. I have had conversations with leaders in FDC as well as other parties. Our view, you see, when we're going to the summit, of course there was just technicality, the absence of one. What does this mean? But in the IPOD MOU, there's also the provision for ratification of decisions. For example, you can ratify, even if you're not, you can sign onto and ratify later, and we adopt. Before it becomes binding, you need to ratify. And Honorable Amuria can tell us, can let this country know that his colleagues told him that they would be able to come and give him a debrief of what has come out of the summit and how, and see if he can get back on board. Our understanding is that FDC is still in the room. FDC has concerns which are legitimate, and all the other actors within the IPOD framework realize that these points are legitimate. And I need to report that at the summit, these issues that FDC raised in its letters were raised by the other colleague presidents. They said, before we talk about many things, the reasons why our colleagues are not here are these and these, and they were dealt with. Not resolved, but they were taken note of. So we think that, and I need to emphasize, Mr. Kamara, that it would not help to try and stick to, get bogged down by legalities. Of course we can, but we shouldn't do that, because in anything called a memorandum of understanding, the underlying weight or power of a memorandum of understanding is goodwill. Because it's a voluntary, as people assume memorandum of understanding voluntarily, so there is expectation of goodwill, there's expectation of a collegial environment. And we hope that this will...
Having said that, then it really reflects that perhaps there was no goodwill in FDC or this. Is that what you mean?
The president is here.
Is that what you mean?
I am saying it is expected. But he can
but you didn't see it yesterday.
He can affirm or deny it, but it is expected that there should be goodwill.
Well, that it is implied.
I think
where's your goodwill, Engineer Muriat?
Well, our reservations are certainly very, very clear, and I think that we point out in our communication the conditions for us to continue in this. Let us be treated like a political party. Let's have the guarantees that any decision that is arrived at will be implemented. See, in the past, we have had problems, for the whole thing being turned into a talking shop. And at the end of the day, all that is discussed falls through. We don't want to have a repeat of this. Where are the safeguards? And I'm speaking about this quite seriously, given the tone that the chairman of the NRM used yesterday, that of degrading the other leaders, and even going as far as degrading political parties, saying how he's around, for eternity. How, for him, is about Africa, the security of Africa, and even bringing in his own family. Something that his father didn't do, his uncle didn't do, he should now do. And so he must be around to do that. You see, he talked about his focus being prosperity. And, to a certain extent, even went as far as saying, look, this is a thing called elections. It's just a little thing. Now, unless that kind of tone changes, I think the environment
So now
is not
how are you
conducive.
going to know,
And you know,
when it's going to come into a meeting,
can I just finish
that's
this?
going to come with a change in the tone?
Let me just...
How do you get to know that?
Let me just drive my point home. It's even said of our concerns that, look, you know, we may consider this thing of rallies. That shows that Ugandans do not have rights. And I think if we are political parties worth their salt, this is a point where we should pull back a little and say, wait a minute, are we really dealing with willing people?
Okay.
You know, as Frank has said, you know, there has to be goodwill.
Here was a platform.
Where is the goodwill? We ask
Here was a platform. You have President Museveni there, and you have your chair next to him.
And he sat on my chair, actually.
Well, because it was vacant, well, you gave him chance. Here was him.
He came, sat on
You
my
had-
chair.
yes.
What is the meaning of this?
Listen,
James here
you
should
could have
really
sat in-
explain
Yes,
this.
you could have sat in his after all you want his. Patrick, no, wait
Why
a
does he
minute.
want my chair?
Well, you could have sat in his. Is that what you want?
It's very possible.
Look, here you have a platform where you have the president there and the chairman of the party and yourself. And you are making points here. And I think they are valid. But sometimes when you're making such a point and he's not there, you're making those points to yourself. You should have sat there and you tell him when the world is listening.
You see,
That's the opportunity you lost.
claiming
If
that,
for 9 years you've been looking for it.
claiming that Mr. Museveni has not been briefed over these 9 years.
No, I would have wanted
Is
to
really
see
defeatist.
this political
It is.
exchange between Engineer Muriat and General
No,
Museveni
you-
on the issues of Uganda.
Patrick, you cannot convince anybody, you know, following this show, that Mr. Museveni has never been briefed about our concerns.
Yes, but we wanted to see Engineer Amuriat
He has
and
the
General
intelligence, he
Museveni
has
exchange
so
ideas
many years.
and show us where they want to take Uganda. We missed on that. And here you are making a lot of sense, but you're making sense to yourself.
As a party, we didn't miss anything.
You should have also made sense to him.
As a party, instead we actually gained by stating
Oh,
our
you
point. Our absence was loud absence, by the way. It was loud. Those blue chairs
Okay.
that were there, empty, and my chair that Mr. Museveni sat on, you know, really spoke volumes. And that makes us happy. That we can say, no, we are not going to participate in
Wait a
something
minute.
that we do not believe in, that we are not prepared adequately for. Why should we go into an ambush and end up being insulted?
But that's where the problem
Eh?
lies.
Okay, gentlemen, we are going to take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara and my guests tonight are Engineer Patrick Amuriat, the President of the Forum for Democratic Change, Dr. Gerard Siranda, Acting Secretary General of the Democratic Party, Mr. Frank Rusa, who is Executive Secretary IPOD, and Mr. James Tweheyo, the NRM member who sits in the Central Executive Committee, and we're discussing the IPOD summit that happened yesterday. If I may begin with you, Mr. Frank Rusa. You can imagine among the principals at that summit, we had also JEMA. And IPOD is formed of parties that have representation in parliament. But JEMA has only one MP who actually won that during a recent election in Bujiri municipality. Just one MP. And that it is just on that MP who is also at the summit. Yes. Really, when sometimes the president does not want to sit and maybe discuss with some of these, you look, NRM has 375. JEMA has one. Maybe, I don't know how many DP.
16.
About 16 and 30. You know, the power imbalance there is so evident that sometimes the president can talk in the way he's talking because he is in control.
Actually, that is a very good point that you raised, that actually will show the relevance and importance of an IPOD framework in a multi-party system. Whether you have one member of parliament, like JEMA has, or you have 15 or 30 or whatever, when we get to the IPOD house, everybody is equal.
You bring the same number of delegates.
You bring the same number of delegates, you have the same power, decisions are by consensus, no voice is heavier than the other, decisions are made on a round table. And I think it is very important because a dominant party can simply say, because of numbers, we'll always have our day in parliament, we have a social contract with the people, they voted us, we don't have to listen to you. But here they come and said, okay, on some other issues, in the spirit of cooperation, living side by side with competition, from time to time, because we know even if you don't have numbers, you have points, you have got things you stand for. Can we have that forum where we can discuss and not just act to the gallery? This is supposed to be the forum. And the reason why they come to this forum is out of goodwill, as I said. Goodwill has to be emphasized when we're talking about issues of dialogue. So that in this forum, and I can tell you honestly, and my colleagues who were there yesterday can also give witness to this, we saw this collegial behavior, especially in the side summit. Now, so in any sober multi-party system, we can say that when we're in parliament, because we are our voters are looking at us, we are thinking about winning and winning and winning. But when we're in a setup like an inter-party dialogue, we are not acting to the gallery. We are saying, gentlemen and ladies, this is our country. We have a common destiny. Even if you have got numbers, listen to my points. And I'm telling you, there is room to accommodate those points. So I want just to emphasize that we cannot have a sustainable dialogue if we lack the goodwill. I think the challenge to our leaders here is to look inside themselves and do a soul search.
Democracy is also a game of numbers.
Yes, it is. But in the issue of the inter-party cooperation, it is a game of understanding each other. It is a game of looking for common ground where numbers may not be the answer.
Mr. James Toheyo, the president was promising to first finish the issues of Africa and also finish the prosperity issue here. I mean, those are very monumental things because you actually can never deal with them and finish them. I wonder when to...
They are not monumental.
For 33 years, you have not dealt with the issue of prosperity.
It is a process.
And that's only in Uganda.
And
I wonder when you think about Chad and whatever those places.
Prosperity is not transplanted. It is a process that is built. And it has pillars that will bring it up. You have to build a road that will stimulate the transportation of raw materials. You have to build dams that will bring electricity. Yeah, all those are issues we need to look at. And of course, that is one of the issues. I felt a little bit embarrassed when some of our colleagues were saying the question of Africa, the question of East African cooperation, the question of widening our spectrum and market is not an important issue. We cannot survive alone as individuals. We have to stretch that. And the president made a mention of it, and clearly too, that to him, it is much more important than his individual capacity as a person. And therefore, the question of saying he's elected as an individual or whatever is less important than the questions that affect this country as a country, than the questions that affect East Africa, than the questions that affect Africa.
Yes, but there are institutions which are mandated to steer that forward.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be his problem. We have the East African community, we have the political federation.
Correct.
That's supposed to be...
The institutions are available,
supposed to come on board.
But he has also a duty to play as a player, as an actor in these institutions. And I don't think it is right for anybody to say, look, you don't have the right and freedom to get that done. And there is no reason why he should say, me, I'm incapacitated, I'm unable to, when we see him capacitated, when he sees himself able and can play a role in that. Away from
regardless of what maybe the party says?
No.
But then how would he even say it's a given? It's not given.
Wait a minute.
Is it given?
The party has its structures,
yeah,
of which I'm part. And these structures take a decision. But you take a decision to bring somebody who accepts the offer or offers himself. And if he doesn't offer himself, then we have so many other people coming. But first of all, it takes him as an individual to say, yes, I'm willing. Secondly,
okay,
when we talk of a summit, there is the process of confidence building. In any discussion, in any negotiations, in any summit, there is a process of confidence building. And our colleagues at one point had their reservations. These reservations were obvious. Even ourselves in the NRM party, we had reservations. That is why at one point we say, look, why don't we first give it a try? First of all, can we really visit these parties and we're not understood? We are not misunderstood? It happened. Then we say, can we set an agenda for this summit? It happened. Now, the reservations our colleagues have, and the prediction of saying, look, this will not happen, in my view, is not a good signal for a democracy that leads, or that is led by discussion.
Okay, Engineer Patrick Amriat, when you had decided to visit these headquarters of the political parties, and you did so, when it came to NRM, somehow you did not, and yet you're walking the talk then, not until you reached.
When was that? We, our people went to the NRM. Actually, the Honorable Salam Musumba did go to 10 Chadondo roads and show the presence.
She was heavily criticized by party members for having done that.
You can't stop anybody. She was clear to go there. And so for us, we're comfortable with her going there. Don't mind that, you know, when it came to the time when NRM came, they actually, I don't know what kind of people, we didn't see any senior person coming to us, to the FDC. Salam Musumba, for all intents and purposes, is a very, very senior person in the party. Deputy chairperson of the party. Went down, NRM came, they sent a very, you know, junior team, I would say.
No, Honorable Todong is the Deputy Secretary General of the party.
Did he come to the FDC? He didn't. You know, we have it on record, he didn't. General Mugisha Muntu, my predecessor, actually came to the Democratic Party. He led a high-power delegation to the UPC Secretariat in the Uganda House. That is how committed we are to this IPOD. But as I observed earlier, anything that we want to do should be principled. From one stage to another, we have got to be sure that, you know, the next stage is safe enough, is well protected. And this is what we are going to, you know, see. Of course, the report of yesterday's interaction, I hope, will come out, and that will be privy to that report.
Is it also true, Engineer Muriat, that you didn't want to have just a photo opportunity with the president?
It's true. I mean, we don't have time to waste. We have a whole country to go to.
What is there? What is there for his benefit?
We have a whole country to go to. Yesterday, I didn't go to IPOD, but I spent time up country, mobilizing and talking to the people.
With all respect, what is there for President Museveni to have a photo opportunity with Engineer Amuriat, who is the FDC president? Yes, but if it was Dr. Besigye, because they share history, they share a long history of also conflict and political contestation, maybe. But
I lead a party that has got supporters close to 10 million in this country. So if you think I'm a little thing, you know.
No, that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. That's not what I do. Please do not even try to take it that way. What I mean is that these two individuals, the contestation between them can speak a lot, because he has not had a serious conflict with you in terms of politics. He has not.
Dr. Besigye is still around.
Yes.
He's a member of the FDC.
The picture of you shaking hands with President Museveni and Dr. Besigye speak a different kind of...
I am the president of the FDC. I want to remind you this, Mr. Kamara.
That's not in doubt.
Yes.
I'm giving you a perspective.
Yes,
sir.
and I provide leadership in that party. So, like I said, I am not just some little thing. No.
I don't know where you're getting that one from. Because
that is what you imply.
No.
That's what you are saying.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. I'm giving you the two examples, the two scenarios of President Museveni and Dr. Besigye, considering this is a man who has contested against him 4 times. considering this is a man who fought with him in the bush for 5 years, considering this is a man who was his personal doctor, considering this is a man that they have interacted and fought over so many things. So when they come together to shake their hand, that picture speaks more than the picture with you and him. That's what I was meaning.
I want to tell you that I represent something bigger than me as an individual. Ours is an institution. It's not an individual. So when I go standing there, it's not Amuriat standing there. It's not power standing there.
Okay, let me.
The entire membership of the FDC that is standing there next to Mr. Museveni and shaking hands with him.
Okay.
And the same applies to my colleagues in JEMA, you know, in the UPC, in the Democratic Party.
But even to Mr.
Okay,
Museveni,
We don't represent ourselves when we go there.
Yes, you don't.
You know,
yes,
just
you
the
don't.
same way we believe that Mr. Museveni
Yeah, he represents the party.
goes to IPOD not as president.
Right, that's why he was wearing his yellow shirt.
He goes
Okay.
as chairman of the NRM.
Okay, if this was to be like the precursor for the national dialogue, Dr. Siranda, and sometimes you don't agree on the on the agenda, but also the national dialogue. One of the items perhaps is going to be transition of power, and now the president is calling it petty. Do you think even the national dialogue will be there?
No, I think the most important thing that we want to believe together is that let's first take the first step. Even when you want to talk about transition, even when you want to talk about change of power or change of guard, can we first take the first step to do an engagement, to make sure we do the speaking? The first meetings are always very tense, but as you go on speaking, maybe the tensions are reduced. And you know that we're all politicians, we all want to, you know, you have all the people that have voted you. I want to assure Ugandans that we cannot talk about transition of this country without the man, President Museveni, the chairman of NRM, who has been in power for 30 years. Everything has collapsed, everything is looked. President Museveni has become a system of, you know, he's more of the system, to the level that even children who have lacked food, they will say, President Atuyamba or President should help us. What we are trying to do is to assure Ugandans that we can take power, we can have power, transition of power without bloodshed, and that when we are in power, we shall not kill those who believe in NRM, we shall not kill all those who are NRM, we shall provide a better platform for the president to live even when he is not out of power. Those that are around him can survive without him. But if we present an environment that does not allow us to discuss, that does not allow us to have a meaningful engagement, sometimes we must a bit bend down. Sometimes bending down is the strength. I will use an example of a chain. You know that a chain can pull all the heavy things, including trailers, but because its power is because it is
Malleable, it is soft.
It is very flexible. We who want to get power in a peaceful way, we do not want to jump dead bodies to get power. All we want is, we have, Mr. Kamara, we have done everything. We have thrown stones, we have been on the roads, we have been in the bush. Has Uganda changed? Let us give the opportunity of speaking. I believe that the world will judge us, that we went to speak to the president as the chairman of NRM. For the first time in the history of Uganda, he came to the meeting when he's not the chairman. I have not seen President Museveni go to the meeting when he's not a chairman. In this country, he came to a political meeting where he's also invited to be doing the speeches. I believe that this was the first curtain raiser. I believe that we keep persuading ourselves, we keep speaking. I said in a meeting that the body language and the language the president uses, you know, and also ourselves, does not promote the oneness. Our togetherness is key for the transition of the Uganda that we need.
Dr. Siranda and gentlemen, we are going to take a break. When we come back, I'll open the lines so that those of you who want maybe to engage the panelists here, you could engage them and tell us what you think about the yesterday's summit, whether there was a loser or even a winner. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guests tonight are Engineer Patrick Amriat, the president of the Forum for Democratic Change, Mr. Frank Rusa, who is the executive secretary of IPOD, Mr. James Tueheyo, member of the Central Executive Committee of the NRM, and Dr. Gerard Siranda, the Secretary General of the Democratic Party. You know, Mr. Frank Rusa, if I may begin with you in this last segment. Today, I just saw a tweet from Raila Odinga of Kenya. And the picture where he was welcoming the president of Kenya at Kisumu International Airport, where he will be visiting the region, I think that side of the western region, for 2 days. Considering these people were, you know, really enemies of sorts, political rivalry, but they seem to have buried the hatchet, and Kenya seems to be moving on in some way. Can we see something? Is it possible for us to see something like that happen?
Of course, it is possible.
Where we see Engineer Amuriat or President Museveni welcoming Engineer Amuriat, and they're talking for the issues
of course,
of Uganda.
See, by the way, we had it was a very warm atmosphere yesterday. The people who were there can tell we had never seen anything like this. The president was
without FDC in the room.
Yeah,
really.
but there was quite a bit of. But let me say this: that in IPOD, the tagline for IPOD is putting Uganda first. That is the message IPOD is trying to build. It is possible, but how do we get there? How does Raila, Odinga, and Uhuru get to that point? You see, we say at NIMD, the organization that hosts the secretariat, that democracy starts with dialogue. If you cannot talk to somebody, you cannot compete fairly with that person. So one of the things that constant dialoguing does, as opposed to the impatience of wanting to hear what are the resolutions and what have you done about it, it is whenever you keep engaging, you're building trust. You're building trust over time. It grows. It's like exercise. When you exercise a muscle, it becomes stronger. You just don't wake up from enemies and become good buddies like Raila and Uhuru. It takes time. And one of these includes breaking the ice. Come to the first meeting. Maybe what are the issues that were very high for DP? DP says the most important issue is the transition. NRM says the most important issue is Pan-Africanism, it is Africa, it is solving problems. That's their perspective. You may disagree with it, but that's their perspective. Now, the rules of dialogue and engagement say, let's understand. For you, you think the most important thing is transition. They think the most important thing is security. Another person thinks that the most important thing is something else. That's the beginning. But break the ice. Keep engaging. But if you don't engage, how else are you going to expect that one day you'll suddenly be friends? So I'd like to encourage our leaders that this country is looking at you for leadership. I think it is important, apart from the courage of coming to a meeting like this, I think also need to embrace the humility. It takes courage, it takes humility, it takes putting Uganda first, to take some of these baby steps. And of course it's not easy. It is complicated. Nobody is saying it is easy to dialogue, especially if you've been in the streets with running battles and getting a bloody nose. But leadership, President Mao made an example yesterday, and I thought it was very pertinent and a good example. He talked about how difficult it was for an Acholi leader to be like Mao, to be seen speaking as if in defense of Kony, in the name of peace in northern Uganda. But he was trying to tell us that sometimes this is the price you pay for the ultimate trophy of peace. That a leader should be able to experience some of this discomfort, some of this inconvenience. So really, for me, I think that it is possible that one day we can get to a point and of seeing how Uhuru and Raila are behaving, even here in our country. But we need to be willing to pay the price.
And compromise.
We need to compromise. We need to come to the room and start the conversation.
Engineer.
Yes, I think that what happened yesterday should not have happened. This should not have been a forum for debate, for pulling and pushing. And this is the gist of it all. We thought that the principals should have gone well knowing the positions of their fellow principals. Going to this meeting, everything would have been cooked by the National Council, the Council of the Secretary Generals, and documents shared between different political parties and their principals. And after getting to a level of some certainty, that would be the point when the summit would be called and say, well, we're now going to make nice speeches speak to each other, the ice would have been broken. Our argument as the FDC is, you know, just going to a summit for the sake of breaking the ice, I think was a waste. That should have been a question dealt with before. Those in the kitchen, once the food is ready, then it is served. This never happened. You know, and I hope that maybe we will learn from
being the first summit, really, it had to have some kind of a teething problem somewhere, because you're just taking baby steps. You're just beginning. You have to understand that you're beginning to dialogue.
No, Patrick. IPOD has been around.
No, in terms of having a summit of that nature.
Look. 9 years, 10 years of IPOD, and we are still breaking the ice. How much more time shall we need now to get to the center or the core of our problems? Probably another 9 years, 10 years. Are we going to, is this country going to wait for eternity?
So you wanted some issues to be discussed and to be endorsed. Maybe you go to the summit and sign them, or what?
Yes, in fact, what we had even been told about is that there would be a communique, written and signed. It was on the program.
Maybe let me talk about
that I have. There was supposed to be a communique.
Okay, Dr.
Now,
Sivan.
you know, I would not lead the FDC into signing a communique without even seeing the contents of that communique. You see? So, that is what we were given. And we have no reason not to believe in what we were given.
I want more clarity on how we would want issues to be concluded before you even a dialogue starts.
But this is a matter maybe...
How could we have seen a communique when he was not present in formulating it?
It is in our MOU. This deliberate steps that we... And, you know, Frank is probably the best person suited to explain this.
So it appears, Frank,
light on this.
It appears, Frank, somehow you didn't follow the MOU. That's what engineer is saying.
That, you know, they say luck is opportunity meeting preparedness. So what has been... We've had conversations with all these leaders, and they were saying that we need a summit. And who was the stumbling block to the summit? They say we have never had President Museveni committing to come to a summit. So when we had the first meeting, when I got an opportunity to the council to meet with the president, one of the first issues they raised was, we need a summit meeting with you. And he said, yes, we'd like to have the summit meeting. Then we suggested the date. Then he said, we're going to have the date. Now, this is the idea. So the retreat of IPOD Council sat in November and came up with suggestions of the thematic issues I'd like to discuss. But I said it would be better if we get the buy-in of our principals even before we start discussing these issues. So, and we need to get the buy-in of our principals in the full glare of in the international cameras and our citizens and our members. Let's have a big occasion, relaunch our commitment, tell the whole country that we are back in the room to talk. These are the issues, and let our bosses endorse them. After they endorse them, between now and May, we are going to have a series of discussions, cross-party discussions, drilling down in these issues, looking at what is it that you want to change, and making solid recommendations. On May 15th, there will be another summit. This time, the summit will not be as big as you saw. It will be for leaders. They can spend a whole day, a whole weekend if they want, and come up with final positions. The reason why we think that it would be nice to have them in May is because May is 18 months away from the next election. Really, if there's goodwill, we should be able to implement some of these. We should be able to see some legislative reforms. We should be able to see some constitutional reforms. Or if it needs to be, we should see some policy and policy framework reforms within the political parties. So the reason why it looked like we're stampeding is because we didn't want to give the opportunity, the same problem that we had the last time round, when reforms were brought and they said there's no time. We wanted to do these things in good time. I agree with Engineer Muriat, the president of FDC, when he says that it felt like a bit of stampeding. Yeah, we can take a bit of, as the secretariat, I can take a bit of that responsibility, but I also said I thought it was important that we mobilize the resources quickly to take advantage of this opportunity that has come in good time, to dodge that problem of time.
Because of the roadmap that's about to...
Yes.
Before Mr. Museveni goes away, you know.
Let me
It
open the line.
looked like he was on a
Just
journey
something.
to go somewhere.
Let me hear
That
Dr.
is
Siranda,
something
but I will be able to stop you.
You have
if
to
I
hit
get
the iron
somebody.
while it's still hot.
Okay,
I think
Dr. Siranda.
the most important thing is to also track around our region. Getting Raila to tweet that, it has taken a lot of time. The first important thing was to get these two people inside one room. And when you track back in 2007, it was very, very, very difficult until Kofi Annan had to get Raila Amolo Odinga and Mwai Kibaki in one room. Sometimes when people are speaking directly to each other, it brings, some humility. It brings people to understand even the body language rather than using the go-betweens. In South Africa, the example I love using is that Mandela, even when he was in captivity in jail, the talks continued to go on. I can elaborate and many. For South Sudan to get that secession, you had to get Bashir and the late Garang in one room. For me, the most important thing that I take from this is that let us not block the discussions. Let's try the discussions is the way to go.
Let me
Let us
open the
engage,
lines so
and
that
the more we engage, we get to understand each other's feelings. It's very, very, very difficult at the first engagement, but as we go
Okay,
on,
we have the numbers on the screen there, so you can call us. Please be precise and concise, so that maybe we can be able to take 2 or 3 calls. We get to hear your voice from wherever you are. So I'm taking the very first caller online. Hello.
Hello?
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Bonio Gongson, Lira.
I'm sorry, sir?
Bonio Gongson from Lira.
From Lida. Okay. Go right ahead.
I have 2 areas of concern.
Okay.
One is the dollar question of the money funding from Netherlands.
The donor money.
Yes. We want proper accountability for that money. Because we don't want where, because we have seen the dollar and the way of mobilizing it coming, then they say, we want to hurry put the party together. If it was the issue of parties, it should have been issues of party, not only the leaders.
Okay, just hold a bit there. Let me ask my producer to turn up the volume a little bit so that my guests can be able to hear this with clarity. But they are hearing you as well. Could you continue, sir?
Yeah, I've changed it off.
Okay, go right ahead.
Another area of concern is now, don't compare Kenya with Uganda. Because their leaders, they are fairly democrats.
Okay.
So military leader, yeah. You are talking of a military leader. President Museveni is a military leader who came in the book since 1986. And here we also want to build leadership that responds to the civilians. So the two are quite different.
Okay.
So the dialogue should be dialogue that can bring change.
Okay, we had your earlier submission, but now the line is not as clear as it was at the beginning. So I'm afraid we have to cut it short, but I think we have gotten the point, sir. Our caller there from later. Let me take maybe 2 more so that we can have my panelists make their closing remarks. I have another call online. Hello. Okay. As we try to sort that issue of the line, maybe Mr. Frank Rusa could respond on the issues of the donor money.
It was asking about accountability or something?
Yeah, but also the people putting in the money could be having an agenda.
Oh, yes, of course. That was the question. Okay. The Netherlands Institute for Multi-Party Democracy that hosts the IPOD Secretariat in Uganda is an international NGO based in the Netherlands that was formed by actually 7 political parties. It is actually has multi-party in its DNA. 7 political parties started this organization to try and promote 2 things. Inter-party dialogue in other countries, because they saw it work so well in their own country, and supporting political party capacity strengthening. This kind of work that we're doing here is we also do it in 25 other countries around the world. We are very closely associated with the inter-party dialogue process in Zimbabwe, in Mozambique, in Ghana, which has produced very good results. We have We're doing the same thing in Kenya, and we're trying to set up operations in Ethiopia. So this is something that we do. This is an area we have, a niche area we have decided to promote because we see the advantages of it. So, and in terms of accountability, so this is what they're doing, and their interest in this is to see, actually, just for purposes of more perspective to it, when these Dutch organizations first launched, their first entry into Africa was fighting apartheid in South Africa. When they helped finish that process, Nelson Mandela, the late Nelson Mandela, Papa Nelson, suggested that, why don't you do this in other parts of Africa? So then they go to Mozambique, and the story of these different countries starts. Here in Uganda, in 2009, political parties in Uganda, including the ruling party, approached them in The Hague and said, can you come to Uganda and help us set up an inter-party organization, dialogue? And we have been here since with the blessing of the IPOD, the
Okay.
members.
I think also the Coral leader
He talks of the comparison of Uganda with Kenya and President Museveni as a military leader. And I think this needs clear explanation. The President Museveni of 1986 was a military leader. But remember, from 1996 on, President Museveni has been a democratically elected leader, and democratically elected with the highest vote.
Okay.
So I wouldn't like anybody to say yes, much as he could have been a military leader.
Okay. This is what
Yes,
we're going
but
to...
he's a democratically elected person.
All right. What would you, what
I
do you
think
respond?
really removing the uniform doesn't change your DNA, political DNA. It's much the same if you are in military uniform and when you remove it. But I think the caller from Lira has a point on this. You know, we have a different history from that of Ghana, that of Kenya, the one that you referred to about Madiba in South Africa. Completely different. In this country, we have somebody, even in that meeting hall, saying, I am going nowhere. I am here. Don't talk about transition. You know, that means he has preempted the discussion to follow. He's around. Take it or leave it. And I think, you know, when you base the building blocks on such a foundation, then you are going to have trouble as a country.
All right. Let us, we are concluding this. I'm beginning with you, Dr. Siranda, to make your closing arguments.
I want to believe that the politics of Kenya, you know that it comes from a revolution. And the two people that are actually always at the forefront have a background of revolution, and they have walked this long journey of bloodshed and all those. It was very, very, very difficult because Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta was saying, I won with majority. We must take humility. We must throw away pride and put the country ahead of everything. Building Africa and fighting poverty and all those starts with setting a team. We cannot talk about Africa, talk about the region, if we are not talking about our country. Let us set parameters, keep together, and try to walk the talk of the transition we want to see. Being a soldier has nothing. When the soldier, and when you cut a big tree, I want to ask Kamara, when you cut a big tree, it falls on small trees. All of us will suffer, even if this man is a soldier. It is our role to withdraw and get our country to a right line. We are trying to help President Museveni and his team because we are all Ugandans. He has a stake, he has overstayed in power, and we have to play a role in also liberating
our time is really out now. Mr. Tuhei, your parting shot.
Thank you. We, in our discussion, should not forget that we are in multi-party dispensation. And each party represented here is struggling to take power. And I think
or to retain it for your case.
Or to retain it. And it would be fatal for the party NRM to have its leader to say, look, me, I'm abandoning it for FDC or for DP or for the other. That's the principle we should look at first of all.
You don't dialogue yourself out of power.
You don't. It will never happen.
Okay.
And I'd like to encourage colleagues, I'd like to encourage the colleagues that as in the multi-party dispensation, we should be able to listen to ideas that we don't agree with. And not to disagree with these ideas, with all the gentility and humility it deserves.
But there was no
And
humility
we should-
from your
wait,
side
wait,
yesterday.
And we should not expect it that what we want to hear is what we should hear.
Okay.
We should be ready to accommodate that and possibly help those who say it, modulate it to the best interests of our own.
Thank you
parties.
very much. Mr. Frank Rusa, your parting shot.
I think that the outcome of the summit, agreeing on the next date for the summit, was a very high outcome, because that sort of gives the population an opportunity to test whether this is serious or not.
All right.
I am requesting that we give this process a chance, and let's put Uganda first.
Engineer Muriati,
The
concluding
FDC
remark.
is committed to dialogue and meaningful dialogue, principles, and I think that whereas this exercise should have really been supported, I think it's run into trouble at the very beginning of it. I'm not a pessimist, but I think that we are really headed for more trouble as we continue. But well, let's see what happens. We will be listening into what was achieved during yesterday's meeting, and we will go back and have a discussion as the FDC.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for according us your time. We appreciate your insights on the matter. And it was a good thing to see our leaders meet yesterday, even though FDC was not there. At least the FDC president is saying they are still committed to IPOD. And sometimes they can disagree. I don't think it's because they hate each other. It's because they love Uganda more. Good night and God bless Uganda.